On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. One of the big problems the media has right now is the fact that the people have seen behind the curtain. For those of you that have seen The Wizard of Oz, that is a very famous part of this movie, when they're able to look behind the curtain and see the machinations, all the machines, and all the way that this whole crazy Oz was working. And that is what is happening today. Today, it's becoming extremely obvious that the mainstream media is a propaganda arm of not just the Democrat Party, but I think more importantly of the deep state. Just because somebody wears a Democrat as a color doesn't mean they're necessarily only the problem, right? There's the deep state that's also like your Mitt Romneys, your John McCain's, your George Bush's, right? You've got your heavy Republican people that are definitely on the deep state side, and certainly seems a majority of the people on the left right now are representing the same group. Now, Q is talking about all sorts of great things that are kind of leading into this. He's giving us some ideas that things are coming. He's also trying to answer some of the questions that many people have. Like, yeah, I get it, Q. I get there's a problem. I get all this stuff is happening. But why isn't somebody doing something about it? Why isn't Trump going in and arresting everybody? Why? And the problem is, folks, one, a lot of these people that are making these noise really, in my opinion, kind of sound like snowflakes on the left. Like, accept the fact that this is a little bit larger than just the teacher's going to come in and you're going to be in trouble, or you wait till dad gets home. That's not how this works. You've got responsibility. I've got responsibility. We all have responsibility in this. So one, making sure you're educated. Two, making sure you're not falling for all this stuff. Three, you're having conversations with people that are willing to listen and able to listen. You're doing your part, and certainly trying not to be another one of the people that are complaining. Let's try to be part of the solution. And that's really one of the key things that Q is trying to bring home to us. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that the media is doing, just to give a little taste and to help understand that all this is a really small group of people sitting in front of their few TVs or few thousand TVs, and you've got these people with this giant bullhorn saying all sorts of crazy, salacious, incorrect stuff, or at least exaggerated stuff. So again, the notion that Trump should be interviewed in the same fashion as Biden is absurd. Trump has no allegiance to the truth, and it shows every single time he is in front of a camera. He lies, misleads, and promotes conspiracy theories at an unprecedented rate in modern American politics. This is why the news coverage of him is more aggressive than it is with Biden. As Daniel Dale, who was actually watching the Biden town hall Thursday to fact check it, pointed out on Twitter, Biden had exponentially fewer inaccuracies than Trump has had in almost every single one of his situations there. Again, Biden was making stuff up. Let's see, Biden called the Trump response to the pandemic close to criminal, which is insane. Biden, I never, ever thought I would see such a thoroughly, totally irresponsible administration. Seriously, you should try looking in the mirror, my friend. Biden argued that there's a big difference between Trump's political rallies and protests against racial injustice. Again, people are seeing the fact that there's this he said, she said, the fact that what's good for me is not necessarily good for you, that, well, my protest is better than your protest, so your protest shouldn't be allowed. People are seeing what's happening. Now, yeah, you watch the news and it sounds like the polls are totally in favor of Biden. It sounds like everybody's against Biden. It's not. It's just these small little talking heads. Example, weak Senator Mitt Romney attacks GOP's investigation on Sleepy Joe's corruption. On September 16, 2020, Utah Senator Mitt Romney criticized his fellow Republicans in the Senate Homeland Security Committee for their investigations into Democrat presidential candidate Joe Biden and his son business's dealings in the Ukraine. This is Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney is borderline one of the biggest piles of poop on this planet, frankly. I don't care that he's a Republican. Doesn't make a bit of difference to me. He's got deep state written all over his face. And they never let him be president, by the way, either. So this is one of those people. I know Utah is a very heavy Mormon state, and I know he's one of your brethren. I'd really ask that you guys consider looking out for the country rather than just making sure you've got this particular face sitting inside your state. Another interesting thing that's also going out there, and then we're getting straight into Q post, but the U.S. is testing this testing czar, right? He effortlessly debunked ABC's lies on coronavirus testing. So Vega said, we saw that remarks contradiction this week. The CDC director there on Capitol Hill says vaccines will not be widely available until possibly the summer. The president says he's wrong. You were there. Was Dr. Redfield wrong? And then Giroir, or however you say that, actually, I think Dr. Fauci explained it very well last night. The CDC director was correct that widespread use of the vaccine, hundreds of millions of people, will probably not happen until mid-next year. But the point that I want to emphasize is we could immunize 5% or 10% of the population and get 90% of the benefit by ring fencing the vulnerable, like in nursing homes or vaccinating our teachers or those who have hypertension. So both are correct. Again, it's the media taking everything they can and playing it against Trump. They say nothing positive for Trump. Mideast peace talks. Peace deals have been made between countries that have not gotten along in decades and decades and decades, if ever. And still, people from the deep state are like, well, this is just going to throw all sorts of questions into things. We don't know if this is happening because of the Iran deal or what. Again, it's this, if something good happens and Trump had anything to do with it, the deep state has to be against it. It doesn't matter if he helped an old lady across the street. Now he's being sexist because he didn't think she could handle it on her own, right? It doesn't matter what he does. They're going to shoot him down. Post 4731, which is where we left off last. Sometimes non-domestic sources of information provide a more accurate report. Now, the point here specifically is mainstream media sucks. Our U.S. media is owned and is a propaganda arm of this evil faction of our government, this coup attempt. They are responsible for all the efforts that are happening. You and me are responsible for making sure it doesn't happen by making sure we're armed with appropriate information. Now, again, this foreign source, Daily Sabah, I'm assuming this is probably an Israeli paper, but YPK and PKK recruited foreign fighters from Antifa groups in Western country, reports say. So they're talking about how all this stuff in Syria, how they've been trying to recruit these different crazy people from the left to come in here and share these ideologies to help this training. Talks about all the crazy stuff that's going out there. This report also emphasizes the fact that when the flow of foreign terrorist fighters, or FTFs, in the YPG or PKK in Syria were reversed fighters returned to their home countries, the risks they possessed became more evident. So one of the things they talk about is how they weren't really paying any attention to these left radical and right radical groups that were going abroad and getting training and then coming back. They weren't really paying a whole lot of attention to them, at least back in the Obama administration and before. But one thing that's hugely changed, especially since 2017, is they've been watching very closely what's going on with this. In fact, it says right here in the bottom, in its more than 40-year terror campaign against Turkey, the PKK, listed as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the United States, and the European Union, has been responsible for deaths of 40,000 people, including women, children, and infants. The YPG is the PKK's Syrian offshoot. These people don't care about what they say they're here for. They're here to cause chaos. They're here to be part of this chaotic regime. They're here to be these brown shirts to basically get in people's faces. And if you have an opposing opinion from them, they will get in your face. They will possibly harm only to make their point. Again, they've got a loud bullhorn, but the silent majority is significantly more powerful. We have to remember, and we have to have some faith in the fact that there actually are a lot of us that maybe aren't running out and running about and running around with the Trump flags and all that stuff. Because you know what? Sometimes that's not the best idea, especially depending on where you live. You could get seriously injured. So post 4732 is pointing out this particular post here. And there was an individual that was coming in and they were trying to say, I'm not turning a blind eye. I'm just waiting for justice to arrive. Let it be soon, please. This is probably the one concern that a lot of people share. When's something going to happen? When's someone going to make a difference? When is somebody going to do something and save us? Now, again, a lot of the responsibility is going to lie on our shoulders. It's going to lie on us paying attention, spreading the word, learning what's going on, not just believing the mainstream media, understanding that there's something way larger at work. And although the media is playing it up, we need to be able to see behind that curtain and see what they're actually doing. and where they're actually failing for that matter too. And that's very important. So this was an article that they shared a long time ago, and this has to do with the Antifa arrests are coming, blah, 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 right? Concerns over riots heading to suburbia, government sources say. Now, this was written back in June 2nd. So, yeah, it spread into suburbia. Guess what? It's going to, for sure. I can promise that. This gets into all the concerns that people were having about this spread, this movement. And they've done a lot of information to dig into it. They've actually made some decent arrests, and there's certainly been all sorts of talks. I mean, the media plays it up every time. Anytime the media plays it up as something bad's happening to the Antifa people, that's unfair and it shouldn't be like that. Understand that's major arrests. That's positive news for our side of things. The mainstream media is always going to make it sound bad against Trump, bad against any Q supporters, bad against any people that support the right, bad against anybody that's definitely not on board with this crazy ass Biden train. Any of us are going to be labeled part of this disturbance or this problem. But again, people are seeing the violence. People are seeing cities getting burnt down. People are seeing people getting shot. People are seeing, when they say Black Lives Matter, they're seeing Black lives getting killed by these protesters. They don't matter. Black lives doesn't matter to the Black Lives Matters movement. That Black Lives Matters movement is a Marxist group that has direct funding ties to Act Blue, which directly funds the Democratic Party. Just go to the fundraising site for BLM. You'll be taken straight to Act Blue. And again, do a little bit of research. Not hard to figure out. Also, have fun typing in Antifa.com and see what that redirects to. Last I checked, it redirected to Joe Biden. I don't know if that's changed. Maybe it has. We can check right now. What the heck? Let's see. Antifa.com. Oh, straight to Joe Biden again. Pointing fingers at each other. Oh, no, it's you. No, you. You're so silly. So again, this is what's happening. This is what's actually going on. People are seeing this. Again, I've talked about this a few times. I've got good buddies on the left that I work with. They're actually coming to the center, starting to see the concerns. I've got both of them agreeing that vote by mail is probably not a good idea. My one friend who's heavy on the left, but he's on the older side, was like, well, do you think maybe their intentions were good, for people that are sick? And both me and my other friend, who's also on the left, said, no, you do an absentee ballot. If you're worried about your health, do an absentee ballot. Perfectly okay. And he was like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So again, this is one of those things where people, even on the left, are starting to wake up. People that even read left-leaning literature and periodicals and news are starting to question some of the false narratives that are being shared. It's absurd how some of this is playing. So again, I'm not turning a blind eye. I'm just waiting for justice to arrive. Let it be soon, please. Now, this is one thing that was kind of pointed out, and it's another example of what's going on. Now, Aurora, Colorado, go figure. You got Colorado, you got Seattle, you got Portland, and California. 4 of the most crazy liberal places in the entire union. And New York probably going to, start going way East Coast, and you're going to start finding some others that are similar. This is one of the problems that these people in Colorado are having. This is ridiculous. We have this individual, gets out of jail, got a long rap sheet, hooks up with a buddy and says, hey, man, can I rent a room from you or whatever? And the buddy's like, yeah. Well, this buddy happened to have a girlfriend too. This guy started causing all sorts of problems within the house. And I guess at one point it got so crazy that the girlfriend and a friend of hers had to go and lock themselves in the bedroom. This guy went crazy, took a golf club, started breaking everything in the apartment, and then went out into the parking lot and started busting cars. Now, the cops got called out for the second time for this individual. And again, like the first time, did nothing. Why? Because they were afraid to escalate. They were afraid that this guy might get angry and charge them. And, oh, God, what are we going to do? Blow kisses at him. Oh, it's not working. I mean, what the frick? They're not allowed to do anything anymore, right? So, again, nothing could resolve this. The cops just go, whatever, and then they go home. Well, eventually, the fire department had to come to get the 2 girls out through a window because the cops wouldn't do anything. There's Aurora, Colorado for you. This is what these heavy left-leaning places are doing. Most people are seeing this. Even the crazy lefties that live in these cities are starting to go, oh, this isn't safe. People are burning down my buildings and stuff. People are starting to cause problems where I live. Yeah, guess what? It doesn't just stay in the little outskirts where you want it to. It comes to you next. So again, people on the left are starting to see what is going on. 4733, very reassuring. I like this. A couple really cool posts that they share. 1585 was one of them. Organized riots being planned. This was back in 2018. It seems so odd to see stuff like that, right? You're like, oh man, if only we knew back then what was actually coming, right? But new eyes are coming on board the Q train, and this is true. A lot of people started joining the Q movement. This movement is growing fast. That's why it's such a threat to everybody. That's why it's such a concern to the mainstream media and everybody on the left. That's why they have great little nicknames for us. That's why they accuse us of going after the adrenochrome and all the crazy stuff and people trafficking people and all this eating each other and all this crazy stuff. Well, they just try to take the most absurd stuff that's so fringe and not talked about by Q by any means. And then they just latch onto that and say, that's what all these people are. Again, that's what mainstream media does. They lie. They completely lie. They grab something and lie about it. Doesn't matter. They don't even need facts anymore. They used to have some sort of truth to it. So at least you could, bury your lie within a little bit of truth, and then you had a chance. They don't even have that anymore. Right now, it's obvious what they're talking about. Another great post here. We stand, we fight together. Capitalized. Organized riots being planned. Counter measures in place. And they are. And that's why Q keeps bringing it up. He's like, just trust the plan. I know you guys are pissed. I know you want to see things happen. Trust the plan. Hold down your fort. Hold down your line like you're supposed to. You hold down your line. And these guys, they've got their plans in place. And this is the most important part. Resistance is far smaller than portrayed by the mainstream media. Mainstream media makes it sound like everybody feels this way. That's how they get everybody to feel that way, even though it's not everybody. All the sheeple, all the, I will do what I'm told. Those people, yes, I will. Everyone's doing this. I don't want to be different than everyone. But then they keep talking to people, random people, and they're like, why doesn't anyone agree with me? They're crazy. Again, resistance is far smaller than people realize. Attacks are going to intensify. There is support, there's push, there's financing. It's going to happen. They need it to. They need more chaos to even have a chance to try to accomplish this coup they're after. So we collectively are a humongous threat. We are the people. We, the people. We scare the crud out of them. Hence, censorship is being applied and, wherever it can be, and it's failing. So seriously, people are waking up, people are getting pissed about the censorship, and people are actually putting their hands up and saying, this is ridiculous. I want to be able to find out what's going on. Stop hiding the truth from me. So again, this should be very, very enlightening and helpful and hopefully even reassuring. Post 4734, this one's awesome. So right up in here, do not glorify us. We are all patriots. Honor those who serve for God, humanity, and country. Where we go one, we go all. And this is true. Nobody should be glorified. Nobody in this movement. We're all working together towards a common good, towards the United States. So focus on the content or the information, right? Don't get digging off, assuming stuff, making stuff up. That's one thing that's been, us Q people have been kind of yelled at a little bit, right? Make sure you're not, if you're going to speculate, at least admit you're speculating and don't be like, Q said that all aliens are going to land on the White House lawn. No, Q didn't say that. He never said that. Never even brought that up, right? So it's one of those things where we got to make sure we're being fair with how we're presenting this information. Research for yourself. This is key. And this is something that it takes a lot longer to get these things ready just from this standpoint. You go down rabbit holes sometimes trying to figure it out, but ultimately you find out a lot of information and it's extremely helpful. So be your own gatekeeper. Okay, and gatekeeper, what is this noun? It's a person that controls access as to information, often acting as an arbiter of quality or legitimacy. An open internet allows innovators to bypass traditional gatekeepers and promote their work on its own merit. So the traditional gatekeepers in the olden days were your publishers at your publishing houses, were the news sources, were the radio stations that controlled who worked for them. All of these things were the gatekeepers. Those are no more. People are self-publishing. People have websites. People are doing YouTube. People are doing all this different stuff, Twitters and Instagram and all this crazy stuff. So again, we have our own abilities now. We are our own moderators. We are our own guardians. So we're deploying camouflage if necessary. And this has to do with trying to, hide certain references, try not to be too specific, especially when you're posting stuff. I think Twitter's one of the worst right now. The algorithms are sniffing very closely. So you've got to try to stay on top of it. There was someone that shared one that was a little crazy. And I think we talked about how if you have the 4 black corners, like put a little black on the corners, that changes the picture 20%. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but that is true. And then there was another guy that actually overlaid 3 pictures on top of themselves to sort of hide a picture. But the problem was, I think, and it was that one of the clock that shows 10-2, and it's the Mickey Mouse hands. The problem is, I think it misses the 8, the countdown. I think it misses the most important part of that picture because it created this funky coloring over it. But that being said, they're playing around with it and they're trying to keep some of these algos from finding it. So keep charging, Midnight Riders, and that's important. Midnight Riders, of course, Paul Revere and the Midnight Riders, or Paul Revere and the Raiders, right? The whole thing. Keep charging, keep doing it. Revere's Midnight Ride. Delivery of free information. We've got to keep working on this, folks. We got to keep doing our part. We got to keep basically doing our time, doing our service, and trying to get this out. I mean, most of this stuff's not monetized for me. Of course, if you would like to help, I appreciate that. There is a PayPal link below. That's fantastic. But all my videos are not monetized. Anytime I talk about any of this stuff, or just anything that's pro-Trump, I can't get monetized to save my soul. Whatever. I got a job. It's cool, right? But that's one of those things. This is how it is. We can't do it for the money, per se. You can't do it for the fame. I'm doing it for the information. I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it to help you. This is the only thing. Like my other channel's a manifesting channel, right? It's about manifesting and giving spiritual guidance. I feel like I'm doing more of that now in practice than I was when I was teaching people how to manifest a better life. So again, it's us doing our part, whatever that is. Like, this is the thing I can do. What can you do? What's your thing? Let's find something that you're good at. Are you good at writing? Start a blog. Are you good at getting out there and holding the Trump flag? You get out there and hold the Trump flag. Do whatever it is that works for you. It will make a big difference. And most importantly, it will bypass the controlled media narrative. It's the most important thing that we can do is to try to get past this stupid narrative that makes no sense. And as long as there's a counter narrative, as long as there's another narrative, then it starts to become confusing to those that believe in one narrative versus those that are talking this other narrative. And one narrative is actually positive and freedom promoting, and hey, you can be a part of this group too. And the other one's more like, hey, no, you're not allowed. You're the wrong skin color, or you're not the right sexuality, or you're the wrong religion, or you're the something, right? You believe in things we don't like. Then no, you can't be a part of our group. And that's not cool. So one guy in here, and I just like the fact that he's saying this. I'm ex-military. Over the past 3 years, I have talked to family and friends about current events, and most have finally come to see the light. I can discuss just about any topic brought up and have enlightened many. The one question I struggle with is, how come nobody has been held accountable? I don't have the answer. I agree with you. And again, I think it has more to do with how many ducks in a row you've got to have before you can actually bust some of these people that were untouchable. Think about it. 2 tiers of justice, untouchable, 2 sets of rules, 2 sets of laws. We've had to change a lot of stuff just to be able to even that playing field down to where there's essentially 1 set of rules-ish. And they're still even fighting that. They're trying to go after Barr for trying to bring up the Biden stuff because he's the presidential candidate. It's like, come on, man, get out of here. That's not how it works. So again, stuff is coming out. There's nothing they can do to stop it. There is nothing they can do to stop it. And just as majorly powerful as it was September 11th, 2001, when those 2 towers came down, these next 2 indictments, or next possibly 3 indictments, are going to be earth-shattering. So one other thing that's happened, it's just good to know for you guys, this was on Forbes back in September 17th, so yesterday. Twitter's expanding its QAnon restrictions to include candidates and elected officials. So now elected officials can't share pictures, can't talk about Q, can't do any of that stuff. And we had a couple elected officials that brought it up. I want to say it was like Kentucky or someone over on the East Coast, something like that. Someone brought it up and everyone's like, oh, you're crazy. And then they've tried to bring it up with Trump and Pence and everybody else. And again, it's just this ridiculous thing. And then all of a sudden they drop it, right? Because no one gave the answers they wanted. They couldn't really go after Q the way they wanted. But it was brought up and it was also talked about by the president, by the vice president, and by others. You know what that does? That gives it some credibility because now it's been talked about on mainstream media. Now it's been brought up. Makes it a little harder to censor something that's been talked about in legitimate spaces. Again, it's one of those things that sometimes you give them enough rope so they can hang themselves with it. And very much that is what is happening. So again, Twitter's cracking down. We got all sorts of candidates on Twitter, some with huge followings that were verified on the platform and continue to promote the conspiracy theory with few restrictions. Conspiracy theory. So again, Twitter's going after these people. Today, we're sharing more about how our platform manipulation and spam policies applies to coordinating to cause harm. Our coordinated harmful activity framework defines how we evaluate harm and when we'll take action to help keep you safe. Because you might read some weird thing about the 17th letter of the alphabet. You might read something and just mess yourselves up for the rest of your life. It's kind of like the same thing as if like you just stare at the sun for like an hour. It is just as damaging to stare at Q information for like an hour. You'll go blind. Oh, you'll go blind. It's like playing with yourself. Can't do it. Post 4735. If somebody comes to accept the truth or swallow a red pill without knowing it was associated with Q, then they do so unpolluted by media bias, don't they? Right? So think about how many people are kind of starting to come to this in different avenues, not just necessarily the Q platforms, but maybe people talking about stuff and leaving the Q part, but talking about the talking points that Q keeps bringing up. So sometimes, again, leaving out the conspiracy part and just kind of sticking to the facts will go a long ways when you're trying to have these discussions with people. You don't need to jump down to, well, QAnon says, Meganon said back in the day. No, you don't need to get into all that stuff. Doesn't matter, right? Then maybe that's more fun for us. Maybe that's, food for our fodder. But when you're talking about regular Joe Schmo, no, hit them up with facts. Share information with them. Like the thing, I swear to God, this has worked for me so brilliantly. I've shared it like 5 times. And I used it again recently with both of my friends on the left. And I'm like, hey, can the right take advantage of it? And both of them said yes. And I said, exactly. That's why it's a bad idea. If either side can take advantage of this mail-in voting, then it's a bad idea. And they both agreed. It's a bad idea if either side can take advantage of it. Not a hard argument to make. And truly, even people on the left will be like, yeah, I guess you got a point. So again, it's not too hard to do. Now, again, we've seen this lots of times. Hunt for Red October has been referenced, I don't know, since 2017, I swear, I think. I think that was the first time it really did get brought up. But Rig for Red. Submarine warfare terminology, they go to red lights. Red lights helps you see better. So if you want to adjust your eyes to nighttime vision, if you put on red lights, that longer wavelength actually helps adjust your eyes quicker or more quickly to dark conditions. So Rig for Red means we're going to maybe go dark. That's my guess. That maybe Q's going to go dark again. We'll see. He's been dark a lot lately. So we're going to rig for red. We're going to go dark. He wants a lot of us to keep doing our own information, keep following the news, keep digging and looking, and keep sharing with everybody. And again, rig for red. Be prepared. Just get your stuff in order. It's September 18th right now. What does that mean? We got 13 days to the next month, and then, 12 days to the next month. And then 31 days, so 43 days? Thank God I did that. Okay. 43 days till the election. Getting very close. Well, +2. Whatever. Close enough. Doesn't matter. So one thing I kind of want to point out, and this is my point of what the mainstream media does. They take something that's small and they make it seem huge. But the problem is, when you think of these things in our life, I think of the Statue of Liberty, the Alamo, the Mona Lisa. There's a few of them that get shared here. That you think of them and you think they're huge. You think they're just these monumental, huge things. The Sphinx is another great example. And you find when you see them that they're not nearly as big as you thought. Good example, the Little Mermaid in Copenhagen. That's how big it is. That's all it is. Just this little thing that's not even a full-size person, just sitting on a rock. But the way they do the pictures, it makes it look large, right? Very large. What about the Mona Lisa? Not nearly that big a picture. See all the people standing in front of it? That's it. A lot of people, you see it and it's all giant. You're like, oh, it must be this giant mural. No, it's a tiny little picture. Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty was surprisingly small. That was literally the first thing I thought when I saw it. Was like, wow, I thought it would be bigger. And you can kind of see it here. Like, this is a boat that's getting close to where that island is. It's not a whole lot of perspective difference. It's about that big. It's surprisingly small. I mean, it's pretty tall. It's a big statue. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of times you have the theories of grandiose, right? Like this should be this giant gatekeeper of our country. Oh, it's not even nearly that big. So, of course, the Mannekes Piss in Belgium, probably Peace, it's probably close to how they say it. Look how tiny that little thing is. Little itty bitty guy there. Looks huge here. No pun intended. Everything looks bigger up close. But Mount Rushmore, another great example. Not that big. It really isn't that big. Looks huge when they show the pictures of it. It's like, oh my God, it's massive. No, it's not. It's not massive at all. White House, I've never been there, but apparently I guess it's not very big. And Egypt, this one blew me away. Look at the perspective. I thought the Sphinx was huge. No, it's tiny. Look at this itty bitty little thing. There's a truck out in front of it, like tiny. Meow. It's not even very big at all. No. Again, the Stonehenge, not very big. I mean, good sized stones, but I don't know. Some people probably assume this is much, much larger. That's about the size I assume it was. Big Van, I don't know why that's in here. I don't really care about that. This is the other one that really tripped me out because our IT presence is down in San Antonio area. And so I went down to see the Alamo one time. We happened to be down by, what do they call that? The River Walk and all that stuff. It's a famous part of town. They got a wax museum just down the street from here. Pretty cool part of town. The Alamo, this is it, basically. This is it. This is the Alamo. Somehow this stopped Mexico from invading our country. Like this itty bitty little thing. Like there was a small wall out front that I swear to God, you could just chuck things over. It was very disappointing to say this is like almost the entire Alamo right here. Like that's it. So sometimes they take things that seem way larger and they really aren't that big when you finally look at them. And that's what mainstream media is doing. They're making things bigger than they actually are. And when it comes down to it, when we actually look at the facts either aren't there. The issue is way smaller than they said. The number of supporters is way fewer than they said. The number of people that are on the silent majority is way larger than they say. Again, they misrepresent what's actually happening. No new Q-pills going on. I just want everybody to remember we need to look out for each other. We need to pay attention to what's going on. We need to make sure we've got our earthquake kits ready to go. Make sure you're ready Second Amendment style and everything like that. Make sure, because things are going to get a little wonky, and you've probably literally got 1 to 2 weeks before things really do start to get pretty crazy. October is probably going to be a reasonably crazy month. Be prepared. It's the most important thing. Look out for one another. Look to see how you can help this movement. Look to see how you can play down the Q thing. We don't need to be talking about the conspiracy portion of it, especially as it's been labeled as such, but stick to the facts. Facts are hard to call conspiracies. You can say they're Republican talking points, but if they're facts and you can back them up with articles, you can call them what you want. It doesn't really matter. It's still factual. Keep these things in mind. It's making this whole decision for all of us a lot easier. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.